organize or host?
It'll go to everyone. So if you have a question, it will be seen by everyone.
Okay, fabulous.
Okay.
Well, let me first of all introduce myself. I'm Tony Rodriguez, the Director of LaPorte County's Community and Economic Development Office, located in downtown LaPorte. We, of course, given the circumstances, our office is working primarily remotely, but either myself or Bailey, we're alternating right now in the office days that we're serving in the office. So the challenge is the county office building physically is still under a lockdown. So the doors are locked. In the event that there's any need to schedule a meeting, we will schedule and of course handle appointments directly with clients one-on-one or for any needs that you may have. But first of all, I wanted to take a moment to thank Bailey and LaPorte County's Information Technologies Department for kindly setting up this event and making sure that our communication tools are first class and allowing for the ability to conduct the session today. But it is certainly a project and an event that we could not put on without our partners that I'd be remiss if I did not mention. As you'll see on the screen there, our co-hosts today are the Economic Development Corporation of Michigan City, Clarence Hulse, the Executive Director and I've noticed that he's joined us today. Mr. Bert Cook, the President of the LaPorte Economic Advancement Partnership, and additionally the LaPorte's Chamber, which is part of their LaPorte Economic Advancement Partnership. And Katie Eaton, who I'm not sure if Katie's joined us yet today, but the Michigan City Chamber, key strategic partner in making sure that we have direct communication with our existing business community. It's critical that I think just a noteworthy mention, the department functions as a result of the support of the LaPorte County Commissioners, President Sheila Matias, Dr. Vijay Kora, who right now is doing triple duty, who as a doctor and physician puts him in a unique position to report back to the county's COVID task force on a daily basis, the real-time conditions of what this virus is doing to everyone, and allowing the response team to truly have boots on the ground and have firsthand information. And then Commissioner Rich Mazinski, who is he is the daily, I believe since the first information came out about COVID-19, Rich has been the commissioner in the office, in the trenches, doing the daily work of that the commissioners as a team do. I think it's, we're all right now, the operative buzzword being hunkered down, but I was talking with someone this morning and they mentioned to me that life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's really about learning how to dance in the rain. And I think that just thinking about that for 1 second gives you a perspective about where we're all at in this situation. So keep that in mind as you're nearing the end of your day and you're in the middle of the home office and near wit's end, to just try to remember we're all in control of our own thought patterns and trying to find a way to work through it. The LaPorte County Council is the fiscal body that funds our organization. Randy Novak, the president, Michael Rosenbaum, Harry Gardner, Jeff Santana, Mark Yagelski, Sean Quinn, and Michael Molenauer are the team that handles the fiscal aspects of LaPorte County's budgetary needs. We're very fortunate to have getting right into the program itself and why we're all convened here today. Lori Felt is, quite frankly, she's a one-woman army, and I would be remiss if I didn't just applaud the work that she does in coordinating all things small business in Northwest Indiana, and has been having the luxury of working directly with her on a weekly, monthly basis. Uh, I can tell you firsthand, there's no one of a higher caliber in terms of professionalism and knowing the business of the small business administration and the tools necessary to motivate and counsel entrepreneurs through challenging times, and also those that are just getting started. But today we're here to talk about a critically important Lifeline program that Lori will take us through, and I believe Lori's prepared some slides. So at this point, I introduce to you Lori Felt.
Hi, folks. I'm really glad that you're all able to join us today. And as mentioned, I'm with the Indiana Small Business Development Center. If you're not familiar with us, in good times, we're helping businesses grow and helping lots of startups start. And in tougher times like this, we're really talking with lots and lots of folks about some of the SBA, Small Business Administration, disaster loan types of programs. Our organization is part funded by the SBA, and we're considered what's called an SBA resource partner. And really, this is great timing today because we had an opportunity this morning to get an update from the SBA. So I feel like the information I'm going to share with you is plenty fresh, and I'm sure there'll be questions, and I'll do my level best to answer those questions. But one correction, Tony, I am not a one-woman army. Thankfully, we have a team of business advisors. It's a small team. And we do feel like we're fighting a war right now because there are just tons of small business owners who need help. We totally understand how challenging a time this is, and we're just making ourselves available with information and resources and trying to help as much as we can, as many small business owners as we can. So you may be wondering what you're looking at in front of you. And I hope you can hear me okay. Based on the update we received this morning, I am really pleased to share with you that the SBA website is being kept up to date incredibly well, to the extent where the Assistant State Director of the SBA that we spent time with this morning suggested it's sometimes ahead of him. So I would strongly encourage you, each of you, to get familiar with sba.gov. Even if you want to bring it up on your phone now. SBA.gov, the homepage is what you see in front of you. And of course, there's that nasty, ugly virus-looking thing. And by clicking on Learn More, now this is not a live screen, this is just a screenshot. But if you, on your own time, are able to click on Learn More, you're going to find there is a ton of very up-to-date and useful information on SBA.gov. So I'm going to share with you information about the two main loan products. But when we're finished here or adjacent to the time here, I'd strongly encourage you to learn more about each of these programs on the SBA.gov website. So you've probably heard about the two main programs, maybe a little, maybe these names are going to be familiar to you. I'll talk briefly first about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. So this is EIDL, which people are pronouncing idle. I actually think that's kind of a clever name because, you know, a lot of us are idle, not by choice, but we are. So this is an SBA disaster loan program that has been available now for a little over a week. And the purpose of this program is to provide a long-term loan because of the economic disaster that so many small businesses are experiencing. So this is exactly aimed at the folks who have experienced what they call an economic injury. You're closed or your volume is far less than typical, whether you're a restaurant or a small manufacturer or a salon or whatever, this program is available to apply for online. At the very bottom of the slide in front of you, you see the link to apply online. But of course, if you went to sba.gov, it'd be very easy to find there as well. So you don't necessarily need to note that link now down. You may have heard that EIDL had an enhancement given to it as a result of the CARES Act, the law that was signed on this past Friday by the president, that offers an additional economic injury, what they're calling cash advance of up to $10,000. So that amount, up to that amount, can be available to small businesses without having to pay it back. So I think a lot of people have heard something about a $10,000 grant or something like that. What they're really talking about is this cash advance. So this loan program is available to you to apply for to help you with your working capital needs. So that would be your rent, utilities, and other monthly expenses. It is available to both small businesses and nonprofit organizations. The interest rate for small business is 3.75%, and for nonprofits, 2.75%. And these are long-term loans. I know it's been said 30 years. We're hearing typically more likely a 15-year term, potentially up to 30 years. But in other words, a very long term to pay. How to apply? You apply online at the SBA website. And the application has changed, no joke, 3 times in the last week. Fortunately, if you have not applied yet, it is more streamlined than ever. So if you have not applied for an economic injury disaster loan yet, I would highly recommend that you apply. And the process initially will probably not take you any more than 15 minutes. Bailey, if you want to flip to the next slide, you'll see the screenshot of the application page. This is what it looks like. And again, this is all available at sba.gov. One of the things that makes us recommend most small businesses apply for the EIDL is that, first of all, you apply, you get in the queue, you're not committed to take anything in terms of a loan, but it's another way to keep your options open to get into the queue and hopefully to receive an offer from the SBA of approval. For example, if they offered you $30,000 in a disaster loan, you could consider that and elect to take less than that if you choose. Elect to postpone it for a few weeks if you choose, or take the full amount. You're completely open in terms of what you're allowed to do upon approval. You also, by applying, gain access to that potential up to $10,000 cash advance. So if you've heard about that, applying for EIDL is how you gain access to that. So the newer loan format that you've probably heard about is called the PPP, or the Paycheck Protection Program. So the reason I say this is new is it was made available through the CARES Act as well, signed Friday. And the processes around this are still a little bit being built. So it's a little bit different. As you can tell by the name, Paycheck Protection, this loan is designed to provide business owners a way of keeping their workers on payroll. So it's all about payroll, employees. Eligibility is very similar. It's small businesses and private nonprofit organizations. This is a lot more focused, though, on people who have employees. And the loan amount is much larger. I mean, even quite larger employers, people with a couple of hundred employees, are able to gain access to a significant amount of money potentially through this PPP. So the loan use is supposed to be focused on payroll. It can also cover things like mortgage or rent, utilities. But it's because of the focus on payroll, it's really the intent to have 3/4 of the loan amount to be used for payroll. And I know people may have questions about that aspect of it, so we can talk about this. An attractive feature of the Paycheck Protection Program is that borrowers are eligible for loan forgiveness of the amount spent in an approximately 8 to 10 week period for things like payroll. So the application process for PPP is different. This is designed to go through banks. So in fact, starting tomorrow, the application period is supposed to begin through banks. Now, this has been a very short turnaround from approval on this past Friday to now. So I can tell you firsthand, the SBA are still finalizing some of the processes for this, and as are banks. So I think our local lenders are going to have their hands full. And it may take a little time to finalize some of the application aspects for this. But a sensible way to approach this, if you feel that the PPP is something you're interested in applying for, is to contact the bank where you do business. They may say, hey, we're still finalizing the details. That's a good place to start. So that's the Paycheck Protection Program. Just a little bit about us, if you want to go to the next slide. Our role as the Small Business Development Center is really to provide resources and assistance for folks who are dealing with a lot of this stuff. So on the screen, you see our contact information. We are assisting many business owners every day by phone or email or video conference like this. I will admit we're a small team and we're getting lots of contacts, but we're doing our level best to keep up with those and make sure we assist as you consider these options and consider other things that you are facing as a business owner. So we're here to assist you. We don't charge for any of our services. In fact, be very wary of anyone who suggests that you ought to pay for services associated with anything related to the SBA. As mentioned earlier, there's scams out there. Avoid them, please. We're here to assist you at no charge, and you see our contact information there. So I hope that's a little flavor of both the disaster loan programs, and happy to take questions whenever you guys decide it's time for that. Thanks for listening.
Lori, that's such a tremendous overview. And talk about the information being fresh. My understanding was you were in meetings this morning with the regional partners, your immediate supervisors that they're still crafting a lot of this, the regulation and the delivery rules and regulations, but very much appreciated. I wanted to add, because you touched on the fact that PPE program is going to be handled by local lenders. And the reason we do not have, and we're not posting a list of local lenders on our site. Both of the chambers and both of the economic development organizations are resources that are directly and immediately available. We always advocate that as you did, that entrepreneur, the person listening in now, start with who they bank with currently. You always want to start with your lender of home account. They know you the best. You've got that rapport established. You're going to have a leg up in that they're at least basically familiar with your business accounts and activity. So they would be in the best position. That's why we don't have a list of lenders. We don't recommend one over the other, but there are certainly those that seem to specialize in small business lending, and we can make lists available, as well as the two economic development organizations, in Michigan City and in LaPorte. With that, I thought, and again, we'll hold the questions to the very end, but we're extremely fortunate to have with us on the call Mr. Matt Reardon, who is the CEO owner of MCR Partners LLC, who is doing is currently under contract with LaPorte County's Redevelopment Commission. 30 years of hands-on economic development experience, putting together deals. He's also consulted with the private sector substantially, and is going to, we have the opportunity to hear from him firsthand, in that I believe he'll explain more. He's in the process of applying for an SBA loan and can give us an intimate look at what his experience is right now to date, real time. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Tony. And real briefly, MCR, what we do is we help out, small private businesses, big businesses, and also municipalities. And LaPorte County happens to be one of them. So when we were talking about what's going on with the SBA and how does this work, I said, in our meeting yesterday, I said, I applied for a grant. And so I just want to talk about, my experience. So on March 22nd, I applied for the original EIDL grant. And I got into it, and as those of us who have worked in and around government processes, that there's a high level of due diligence necessary on the paperwork side. So I was fully prepared for that exercise. And with that being said, my effort took about 2 hours because I had to identify and get the pieces of information that were contained in my tax return. Now, I'm talking as a small businessman. I'm assuming that companies that have a handful of employees and on up, have CPAs and or other professionals that are helping them with that information. And I can tell you, if I was not a small business person and had no employees, I definitely would have been on the phone and had to have them engaged in that process and or helping me. So because I don't have employees, I have partners that work with me. I was able to do it on my own, but that wasn't without the access to information. So I had to have my tax returns for my business. I had to be able to interact with the application, meaning I had to print out documents and sign documents, scan them back, and attach them to the application. And I got all that done and submitted it. And that was, I got an email back from the SBA that said that this was received. And that was received on the same day that I made the application. And on March 25th, I received, got another notice from the SBA, and it said received in review. And in between the 22nd and 25th, I noticed that there was activity on my credit report, meaning there was some due diligence being done by the SBA. Somebody was looking at how much of a loan should be made or could be made to MCR Partners and what were their cost of business and so on. And so that occurred in pretty short timeline. And then on March 31st, I received a notification from the SBA that highlighted this expediting the small business assistance or the EIDL funding. And I was a little skeptical because there's, the people are scammers and oftentimes they certainly utilize people's trauma as an opportunity to do that. So I was very careful about the information that I was asked to provide and double checked. But let me put it to you this way: the timeline for filling out the applications was greatly reduced. The first go around took me approximately 2 hours. The second one, as Lori pointed out, it's about a 15-minute exercise if you have your information available. And that information includes your tax ID number, your gross income less cost of goods sold, obviously number of employees or those wages would have been associated with it, and your location and ownership of the company and the year created and all the information relative to the corporation and its creation. And really that was the process. So I'm on, let's see, it's 2 days after I filed. So I should find out here within the next two to 3 days what occurred with regard to the request for expediting funds and how that may work, and then the subsequent loan documents relative to the EIDL. So that was my real-time experience. And, for my clients out there, I've advised that are bigger operations, and some of even my other partners that are involved in this process, they're working hand in hand with their accountant and their banker. And then when those questions come up, they're on the phone with the SBA. So they're all trying to work on this together. And again, I think the prepared companies are going to be the beneficiaries of a pretty quick turnaround. And the organized companies are going to be the beneficiaries of a pretty quick turnaround. And so really that's been my experience.
With regard to, this is Tony once again, with regard to the size standards, Lori, is that something you know off the top of your head? I know that there's a link provided, but maybe if you took 1 second just to summarize size standard with the two of the other economic development organizations online. I know that within LaPorte County, we're blessed to have a pretty strong manufacturing base. Some of those being mid-sized manufacturing companies. Are they available? Will they qualify, and are they eligible to apply here?
See, absolutely. A shorthand version of the SBA size standard is to say under 500 employees. In fact, if you go to that SBA size standard link, they've actually established, based on industry code. Have you heard of NAICS codes out there? Some of you may know what yours is, some may not. But there is a little variation depending on industry around number of employees or total sales. But a great shorthand to consider is that about 98% of businesses are considered small based on the SBA size standard. So I would say the likelihood is very high that everyone on the conference today is a small business. If you get into a few hundred employees, it might be useful to check that size standard link, which is right on sba.gov, or you can reach out to us. We can assist you in figuring out your NAICS code if you don't know it, and checking the size table. But I would say highly likely that yours is still considered a small business, even if you have as many as 100, a couple hundred employees.
That's the statistic, I believe, is 85% of all jobs today typically exist within the small business community. So it is tremendously broad, small business working in just about every sector across the economy. So I have a question that's just come in, and I think unless anyone has anything else to add, excuse me, with regard to the two programs we've mentioned, maybe we'll dive right into the questions. And I will read the first question off here, and it may be, Lori, a question for you. How is the loan amount approved determined by the SBA for the EIDL program? I'm using EIDL as the acronym, obviously. And secondly, how do loans apply for a 501c6 nonprofit? Or excuse me, which loans apply to a 501c6 nonprofit?
Okay. So the first question was more about the size of the loan, right? So what we understand through EIDL is that the SBA loan specialist who is reviewing your EIDL application would be considering your operating expenses for a period of 4 to 6 months, and making an offer of an amount they're willing to approve. Now, bear in mind, at least to our knowledge, we haven't gotten to the approval stage on any of these yet. Matt was mentioning the process he's gone through so far, but to our knowledge, and including the SBA representative we were with this morning, there haven't been any approvals yet. It's still working through the system. But you have an opportunity once the SBA has made an offer, as mentioned before, to consider that and decide if you want to take the full loan amount approved or if you want to take a portion of that amount. So I do think that's really quite positive. It allows you a little bit of time to consider what you really need and look at your other options, including potentially what you may be looking at through the bank with the PPP program. And by the way, if I didn't mention it, businesses can apply for both. That's completely okay to do. And actually, we're encouraging businesses with employees to apply for both.
Hi, Lori. It's Bailey again. We got a couple more questions in the chat box. So does either EIDL or PPP need personal guarantee?
Okay. So what we're hearing, and this has been an area of some fluidity, is that on the EIDL side, we think there may be a request for a personal guarantee in some situations, but lack of a guarantee doesn't keep from processing the loan is sort of the words they're using. On the Paycheck Protection side, I'm trying to think if I've seen the latest on that as far as a personal guarantee. I want to hedge my bets on that and do some checking here maybe while we're talking, because I'm not certain about that. So I'll see if I can find an answer for you real quick.
Hey, Lori, I'm going to chime in real quick just to let the people who had the questions know. They did ask for a list of assets as a business owner, and that information, I had to provide that. So I assume.
Matt, you cut out.
You accidentally muted your, there you go.
They did ask for a list of assets and the ability to calculate your net worth, just so you know, and that was with the IEDL initial application. So I don't know if they're the second go around, they didn't go to that level of detail, but I had already filed one. So it's my assumption that they're going to ping my tax ID number and merge that information together.
I believe that question exists right on the loan application, and the SBA is asking, are you willing to sign a personal guarantee in their due diligence? Is that, do you recall seeing that, Matt or Lori? As a question?
I just located the PPP information, and it does say no personal guarantee on the PPP. On the EIDL side, Matt's absolutely correct. They're asking for balance sheet type information. I know that below 25,000, they're not looking for a personal guarantee, and we keep hearing that it won't be a requirement, but there does seem to be a little wiggle room there. So a little bit to be determined maybe on the case-by-case basis.
Awesome. So we have another question. Can a business apply for both the EIDL and the PPP loan, or do they only have to do one or the other?
So a business definitely can apply for both. I know many businesses are applying for both. And actually, we're recommending, if you have employees, apply for both. If you don't have any employees, perhaps the EIDL is a better fit. The Paycheck Protection Plan is really designed primarily to focus on payroll. So if you don't have employees, or for example, if you use independent contractors only, the PPP may not be a very good fit for you. But yes, you can apply for both. The one thing they stress is you can't use the proceeds from both loans for the same expense. So if you're saying you're going to cover your rent payments with EIDL, you can't also say you're using the PPP to cover your rent payment.
Fantastic. So we have another question. Do either the PPP or economic disaster loan use personal credit scores to approve or deny the loans? So we'll go with that one first, because then there's a follow-up to that.
So as Matt mentioned, they are checking credit. He noticed that that occurred with his application. Originally, EIDL had a higher credit standard. I think I mentioned this has gone through a few different versions, right? And the CARES Act had an impact on this. So now we understand that EIDL has a much lower credit standard. So what that is exactly, we're not totally sure. But our understanding, in fact, I even have an example of a small business owner who applied very early, received a quick decline because of credit, and then was told by the SBA he could reapply because of the looser credit standard authorized by the CARE Act.
Awesome. And then the follow-up, the 75% payroll for the PPP loan, does it need to be used within the 8 weeks time period?
So yeah, I mean, the 3/4 of your PPP proceeds are supposed to be used to cover your payroll expenses. Now, I've heard examples where employers have let some of their people go. So that's an issue for them. This is really designed to urge and encourage you all as employers to bring your people back. And 3/4 of the PPP loan proceeds are supposed to go to cover your payroll. That is the purpose of this program.
Okay, another question. They contacted their bank on the PPP but have not had info yet. Should they contact the Treasury Department or assume that the bank will get back on the information?
So I hope I mentioned the application process really isn't even supposed to start until tomorrow. And I've had an opportunity to engage with a number of area banks. And, very honestly, I think both the SBA and the banks have their hands full in getting ready for applicants for the PPP program. So I would highly recommend, yes, reaching out to your bank, but also being prepared to please be a little bit patient as they work through some of the details and processes on this one. Some of them are just starting to finalize. I think we have a final application as of today. So this is pretty basic stuff. You can understand that bankers are concerned and want to be fully prepared and take the right steps. So please don't expect them to immediately be able to engage and get the process going. They really do need to get the details and processes right.
Awesome. So we have a few more questions. This person has heard that some or all of each loan can be forgiven if used for proper purposes. Do you know if this is accurate or if there are limits depending on the size of the loan?
So definitely that sort of 8-week period of payroll and some expenses for PPP is the forgivable aspect. And there is actually a lot of explanation of the forgiveness aspect of PPP on the website, sba.gov. So yeah, it's that 8 to 10 week period of payroll plus some other expenses that is intended to be forgivable.
Awesome. And then we have another. When do you base average payroll off of? 2019 as a whole or the same time the period a year ago?
So they're going to want to see your 2019 payroll expenses as well your March year-to-date payroll expenses. And they're going to try to do a calculation around that. And of course, some of it depends on how much of your workforce you're still going to maintain. Remember what I was saying about some people have let go some of their employees and so forth. So there's a calculation in there, and it's a little bit dependent both on what you used to have and what you're able to or have decided you will maintain in the future. This is where, business owners have to think kind of strategically on, how much of their workforce, hopefully as much as possible, they plan to and are able to maintain. I hear from a lot of business owners that that's their number one concern, is trying to keep their team together. So they're placing that as a priority. Others may not have an option to maintain their full team. Maybe they think that the best they can do for the time being is some fraction of their full team. So each business is a little different in this regard. And I know these are tough decisions to make. The PPP is just intended to try to help you, the business owner, maintain as much of your employees as possible.
Great. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to send them, or if you would like to ask personally, definitely feel free to. Tony, did you have any follow-ups that we wanted to ask Lori? He's still muted. Tony, you're muted.
My apologies. Yeah, it was just going on and on without noticing. I apologize for that. Mike, I noticed in a text that I received with the question on it, did I ask your question correctly, Mike? I noticed that was actually what the question was sent. Did I adequately ask that question, and was it answered for you?
The second part about, Lori, I think I know, but the second part about the nonprofit, the 501c6 versus the 501c3, I don't believe a 501c6 qualifies for both programs. Is that the case?
You know, it was interesting. This came up this morning with the SBA representative, and I think they're honestly still clarifying a little bit some of the nonprofit designations. I thought private nonprofit would include churches as an example, and apparently there still has not been a determination about churches. So I think, unfortunately, some of this is still a little bit fluid and waiting to be fleshed out. So I'll make a note to check on 501c6s and get that answer back to you if there is an answer.
I've been told, at least to this point, through, because I'm on chamber networks and some of those emails, that and most chambers are 501c6s around the state and the country, but they are included on the payroll protection, is from what I'm seeing. But yeah, it'd be nice to have clarity on that.
I'll see what I can find out.
So we have another question in the chat that I think Matt would be able to help with. We have somebody who applied on Monday and hasn't heard back anything yet. When should they expect to hear something?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't work for the SBA. I can just tell you that the process I went through was applied on the 22nd. They acknowledged they received it. On the 25th, it said received and review, and in between there, they'd ping my credit. And then the 31st, I submitted the expedited loan portion, which really included an abbreviated version of all the information I submitted earlier. But I don't know. I haven't heard anything back. So that's all I have. Sorry.
So I would say, Bailey, I don't remember when you said the person applied, but
Monday.
Monday. It's unusual they didn't get a confirmation of having received it. So that makes me wonder if maybe it didn't go through or it wasn't submitted. Usually you get the confirmation pretty quickly.
Gotcha. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to send them. We
Looks
have
like there's a chat.
Yeah. Yes. If you want to answer that.
So the individual says they received an online confirmation, but then they haven't received anything since then. That does not surprise me. As you can imagine, the volume of these applications is huge. And you know, typically this disaster mode is only occurring in a small geographic area, like several counties or maybe a state, like with a hurricane. This is like a nationwide hurricane, right? So if you've received your confirmation, you know you're in the queue. It actually does not surprise me that you haven't received a communication yet. I would expect that you'll start to get some email engagement with SBA soon, and it's done primarily via email. So good that you got the confirmation, and not unusual that you haven't heard anything since then due to the volume.
Fantastic.
I had asked that question amongst a group of economic developers yesterday, and the regional development company's representative had mentioned they were anticipating a loan volume of about 30 million, and that was not including the professional services categories. So you can imagine the sheer volume.
Yeah, definitely. The SBA has never done anything like this before. And I mean, honestly, we're all in sort of a new era here where a lot of things are different than anything we've experienced before. So I know it's very challenging for everybody. I just encourage you to try to take one step at a time with it. Seek out the help of those who advise you, your accountant if you have one, your banker, other trusted advisors, and just try to take it a step at a time. You know, certainly if we can be of assistance, please let me know.
All right, we have one more question, and then I think we'll wrap it up. Two more. All right, we're only doing the two. Do you know if we have employees that are on base and bonus commission sales, if they are paid at least 100% of their base pay, or will the business stay qualified for the forgiveness for that part of the loan if at least 75% or more is paid to the employees? That was a long-winded question. I apologize. So how does it work for people who get paid bonuses, I believe? Lori, you're muted. Hold on. There we go.
There's a lot of different kind of bonus programs out there. This supposedly incorporates commission as well, but that's what will be very key about providing your 2019 full year payroll data plus first quarter data so that they can assess, you know, how much would be a likely commission. I mean, if it's an employee who's mostly commission and the pattern is up and down all over the map, I think it's going to be kind of challenging for them to figure out what the right numbers are to use. But commission is supposed to be eligible as well as base pay.
All right, and then the last question, can a company that is still open and has not yet laid off any of its employees or have any identifiable losses apply for the loan at this time?
So this is kind of a hot topic, right? You know, these programs are supposed to be for companies experiencing economic injury, hardship, disaster. So they are certainly permitted to apply. I will say, you know, with the volume coming in, it certainly seems like those who are experiencing the hardship ought to be the ones who, you know, are engaged with first. So this is a little bit of a almost tough ethical question, right? If your business is truly all systems go and no changes, and there are some businesses like that, I'm not sure why you would apply for a disaster loan. But you are, you know, certainly able to apply. Is that an answer? Guys, I don't know if anybody wants to weigh in on that.
I would just add, in some of the other chat rooms and another webinar that I listened in on, the SBA, while the task at hand is going to be enormous and they're going to be moving very quickly, they are working towards just what you mentioned, trying to do the quick calculations to determine need or excuse me, approvals based on need. And that means that the small business, in just what Matt explained, they're looking for you to demonstrate in that application the need and the impact of what's occurring on your business and demonstrating the need through the application. So hard to say if you've not lost a customer, not one of your employees has been displaced as of yet, that there's, but again, I think the fluidity of the program having just been approved and knowing SBA, it could change even before anyone receives approval. It could change internally at least a couple more times. Would that be fair to say, Lori, in terms of the manner at which SBA is going to determine their handling of the program?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree. This is a fluid thing. Every day we hear something a little bit new and a little bit different. So yeah, definitely. It is a continually evolving situation.
Yeah.
Hey, one more quick thing. I just, the way my approach to this was pretty simple. I mean, I'm dealing with the federal government and the IRS and all of this involved. And if there's one thing I've learned over 30 years of doing business, the government has two things. They have time and they have money, and they're going to get it from you if you ask for it, and they gave it to you. So I would be prepared to repay whatever you ask for, and approach this with the same rigor that companies do when they're filing their tax returns. I mean, that's serious business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, we have the co-hosts that are fortunately taking the time to join us. Before we wrap up, Bert or Clarence, is there anything you'd like to add, or any information you feel is pertinent to any of the listeners? My understanding is there were approximately 46 people participating today, but is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Not from me, Tony. Thanks for including us, Lori. It's always great to hear from you. Appreciate the information.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you very much. Clarence, anything?
Tony, from my end, yeah, we had a great crowd this morning who learned a lot about the FMLA rules and insurance coverage for the what's going on and what they're covering or not, but also the new rules for FMLA for small business, which is now, as Lori says, 500 or below. It used to be you weren't affected before by those rules, but now you are, and so employees can request certain things, and they can get either 2 weeks or up to 12 weeks paid time off, 2/3 of their pay. So those are issues that small business are going to have to face, alongside the whole impact of the COVID-19. So, but from this seminar, I have encouraged all small business that call us to apply. There'll be a long line, and the earlier you can get in, the better for you. That's been my advice. Apply quickly.
Clarence, this is Tony. Is it my understanding you're in the middle, or you've initiated a survey of your business community as well, trying to get a better handle on local impact? And
yes,
are you directing people to your website to then conduct or carry out that survey?
Yes, and actually we cut it off today, so we are actually in the process of analyzing the data right now. I had 130 business actually completed the survey, and so we're trying to quickly go through it and kind of get a synopsis. Right now, top concerns: uncertainty, cash flow, supply chain. So. But yeah, so we'll have something out probably next week to everybody out there to kind of let them know what's going on. But we're trying to get a snapshot of where the business community is, and we're working with the local chamber, Ministry of Commerce. So I think we got a pretty good handle from a lot of the small business community, which is 50 or below. Is that average? And it was a good effort. We'll probably I'll do it again end of the month to kind of gauge, what they're thinking now and what's happening over 30 days. So.
Well, thank you very much, Clarence, for not only for what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but for participating in the event here this afternoon. Lori, Bert, Matt, Bailey, and the team that helped put this together. We can't do it without you, and your efforts are greatly appreciated. I would just add before we close, the survey, I know that was mentioned, that Clarence's team is working on. Some of the participation today in this event that we were conducting are going into some of our decision making about whether or not there's any additional local assistance we might want to consider putting in place, and we're contemplating that as we speak. So feel free to remain in close contact via our website, the laportecounty.in.gov, or either any of the local economic development organizations. We're here to help, and we greatly appreciate your taking the time. So enjoy your day, be safe, and stay home. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
With that, we end the meeting. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Bailey.